had a very unremarkable middle-class white South African upbringing. I went to an all-girls private school in Johannesburg, and I can't pretend that I had, I was never one of those people who knew exactly what I wanted to do from an early age. And I think as for many people in that situation, I almost kind of fell into doing law at university. And I enjoyed it very much, and then I went to one of the big corporate firms in Johannesburg to do my articles. And during that period, I spent 6 months working as a public defender at the Hillbrow Magistrates Court, which, as I think most people would realize, was quite an extraordinary experience. You know, the Hillbrow Magistrates Court is apart from the area and the kind of living conditions of most of the people there, it's also a real hotspot for immigrants, and often illegal immigrants who come there to try and sort of make a start at life in South Africa. And I realized in that period that I was never going to be able to be a corporate lawyer. And after that, I did a master's in criminal justice overseas. And then I went to the UK and I worked in the criminal justice system there for quite a long time, and then decided to come back to South Africa. And in that period, I had also been following quite closely the work of the environmental justice organizations in South Africa. Was very passionate about that, but when I went to law school, which is that long ago, there was no such thing as environmental law, or there was no specific course on it or anything like that. So I ended up joining the Centre for Environmental Rights, which is a public interest legal organization that focuses on environmental justice in South Africa, which of course doesn't mean animals, it doesn't mean rhinos and waterfalls, it means the impacts of pollution and industry on human beings. And worked there for 5 years, extraordinary organization, extraordinary work. And it was out of that work that Just Share was born. So Just Share is actually kind of like a baby of the CER, because the program that I was heading there was focusing on corporate impacts. I think there's an extraordinary parallel universe of the corporate sector in South Africa, and actually people's perception of the corporate sector as well. You know, as a result of what's happened in our country over the last 10 years, there's emerged this kind of dichotomy of state is bad, private sector is good. You know, the state is corrupt and inept and unable to do its job. The private sector is efficient and caring and makes money and drives growth and jobs and so on and so forth. And while there are, of course, areas in which that may be the case, it's certainly not as clear-cut or simple as that. And what is incredible particularly in the listed space in South Africa, is that there is zero public dialogue about their negative impacts, none whatsoever. We don't talk about wage inequality, we don't talk about climate change, we don't talk about water pollution, we don't talk about air pollution, we don't talk about poor labor practices, we don't talk about gender, sexual harassment in the workplace. We don't talk about any of those things in South Africa in the context of big corporates, because they are the good guys making all the money, right? And so I think that narrative is probably our biggest challenge, trying to break down that perception and show people that just because you are making money doesn't give you a free pass on all the other impacts that you're having. So the public work, the work that everyone knows about, the activism, asking questions at AGMs, putting out reports and things like that, is the part that everybody sees, but it's actually the smallest part of the work. By far the biggest and hardest part is the research and analysis. Every single thing we do from scratch. We never rely on anybody else's analysis of anything. We can't go out into the market making what are, let's be honest, pretty hectic, sometimes accusations, but also advocacy claims, unless we're 100% sure that we're right. If I may say, relate my message on that to social justice in general, because I've worked in the space now for almost 10 years, and I know not just my own work, but the work of most of the social justice organizations in this country. And one of the things that I find saddest is that most of those organizations are funded by overseas foundations and funds. And if you look back at the last 20 years in South Africa, I won't stretch to saying almost every, but a significant amount of anything we've achieved in terms of pushing back against corruption, improving the lives of the most vulnerable, all of those issues, making sure that constitutional rights are not trampled on. The Gupta leaks is the most obvious one, right? It's come from civil society. So it's not good enough just to say, oh, we have a thriving civil society. So glad we live in South Africa, where our justice system is great and we have all these fabulous organizations doing all this fabulous work. Those are people who, for the most part, are pretty poorly paid, do it out of love and dedication, have major expenses and capacity constraints, And I think that if you are a South African who cares about the democratic project and who cares about making the society better for everyone, then really there is no better return on your money, even a tiny amount of it, than investing in some of the social justice work that happens in this country, because it's extraordinary and almost always goes unappreciated.